The goal of all of my discussions that I try to have with these groups, and anybody who's, wants to comment, who's not able to participate live, an audience watching. Please just comment. I'll see your comments. And my goal is never the sense of having you master or get all like get to the highest levels possible of understanding of these works. And I sometimes think when we read great works, like I just had a discussion with Mike Sons and a couple other people on Don Quixote, that we sometimes stop ourselves almost because we feel like I'm not getting enough out of it, or there's too much there, when really the goal, in my opinion, should be like the goal of going through your first like marathon or something, where it's just get through it and set that as a goal for yourself, because you're going to gain a lot through the contemplation and the reflection and returning to it later that you cannot obviously get if you can't return to somewhere if you don't do it in the first place. And you don't want to have that as a stopping point. So I want to encourage you, even if you can't make every one of these sessions, to try to read all the essays, engage with them to the best of your abilities, bring your questions for all of us, and for discussion points. And what we what I again hope to encourage, or what I encourage you to do, is just wherever you are. Like, I've been studying art and reading literature my whole adult life. You may not have been like that. I have people in my groups that are tech CEOs and things like that, and they're coming to it a little bit later in life, and they're going to have a different perspective, and that's good. That's what I want. That's the whole point of these discussions. And I don't see myself as any kind of real expert in this in a certain sense, like a scholar, but as an explorer, trying to explore them with you. And hi, Linda. I see Linda out there. Okay, so here's where I want to begin. And again, this is just a preliminary discussion. We're going to get into the real meat next time in 2 weeks with the psychoepistemology of art. Like, what a word, psychoepistemology. What is that? But this time, I just want to start with you guys and anybody who's out there who might want to answer some comments of what do you think is art? Like, what is art? When you think of art in general, if you ever do, what comes to mind? And I don't care what it is, but what is it?
Art is I mean, I'm not going to parrot Rand from Romantic Manifesto, because we're going to do plenty of that. It's to me, it's sharing what's important with the artist,
Okay.
sharing what's important to the artist with them.
So, so you're giving me a definition. Okay. So
But I mean, okay,
you,
sorry, what were you looking for?
what? No, that's fine. That's what comes to your mind as a definition of sharing what's important from the artist's perspective, right? What they
Well,
see
no,
as
sharing. No,
important.
well. I mean, if it's sharing, no, it's a if you're paying attention to it, it's at least in that moment, important to you as well.
Okay, sure. Okay, so the sharing part to you
That's why
is
I
the
said
symbiotic,
sharing. Yeah,
sharing in between you and the author of the creation of the artwork.
author, artist,
There's
whatever.
Sure.
And art doesn't happen without an audience.
So I agree with, yeah, I think that's an important distinction to think about, of the communicative process or aspect of art. Let's look at what's a recent example that as many of you that are willing to share, and hopefully all of you will, of an artistic experience you had. And but not you creating necessarily, unless you want to share something like that, but I don't care, like just where you felt something, anything from any work of art that you might think of as a work of art. And I'm just curious if anybody's willing to share. Mike.
So this morning I was listening to symphonies, and
Mm.
I was listening to Tchaikovsky, his Sixth Symphony, and then I wanted to compare it to another symphony by Shostakovich, right? Both Russian
Uh-huh.
guys, but quite a bit different, you know. And yeah, I was just kind of enjoying the two experiences.
Okay, so for you, is that you had a symphony, and the experience was, I imagine, what? Like, was it an intellectual one about the comparison? Is that
Uh,
was
a
a
little
important one?
bit, but a lot of it was about the feeling. I was trying to get into like, well, what's Tchaikovsky trying to get across here, you know?
Okay,
What emotion
yeah,
or what story is he telling here, you know? Whereas
sure.
I and how does that compare? It seemed less dark, even though it's famously a dark symphony. Compared to Shostakovich, it seemed very elegant and graceful, which I didn't see in the Shostakovich.
I see. Don, I didn't know if you were trying to speak up or um, about an example of art.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm just struggling with the controls a little bit. Yeah, I was going to say that for myself, I mean, I do paint and I do some dance, but I enjoy the experience of others who create work. But recently, I was rewatching a work by the choreographer Paul Taylor, who's a favorite of mine, um, and it's if you're not looking for a definition, I would say that
Well, if you have
what
one, that's fine. But
Yeah, no, that's fine. I could take different perspectives, but what I seek is to enter the world that they're creating. Like you want to be inside of the world that they're building, and
hmm,
whether it's a piece of dance or music. And I'm one of those people who likes to revisit Atlas like every year or so. I reread it because even though I know the book so well now, I want to be inside of it again. I want to experience what that world was like, and
yeah,
it's the same for me for dance. When I watch Brandenburgs, which is a piece by Paul Taylor. It's just a wonderful, elevated way of looking at life and people and the interactions that we have with each other. It has humor, it has benevolence. There's a kind of grace and dignity in the way that he portrays uh, people in life. Is that responsive to your question?
absolutely. No, this is my whole goal with this preliminary one is just to where are we in this realm? Like you supposedly picked up this book and signed up because you have some kind of interest in learning or discussing
Right.
art and Ayn Rand's view of art. So I don't care if you have no thoughts in your head at all, or you do. I'm curious because the idea is as we read this book, we'll be able to push each other and talk about our experiences and our disagreements, our agreements, and where we are. So Nick, you go ahead and I want to continue like artistic experiences you've had recently. And so I'm hearing some symphonies and some music experiences as well.
Yeah.
But
Actually,
go ahead, Nick.
Michael, wasn't sure if Michael, you wanted to go first or next.
Um,
I did at
go,
some point, but you can go ahead.
Cool.
okay, I might have
So I
missed
was
Michael.
thinking
Oh, sorry,
about,
Michael. So this will help me if you guys raise your hand in the participants. I think it's under chat, right? Where is it? Under React. So if you click React, that really helps me so I could see it. So Michael, if you raise your hand, I'll call you next. But Nicholas or Nick, Nicholas.
from Mike's contribution of like listening to Tchaikovsky again and then comparing it to the second Russian musician and then just comparing and contrasting the emotions from and Don's contribution that just going back to like Atlas Shrugged and just like not even like trying to necessarily, at least primarily, like learn something new or get some new big integration, but just like living in that kind of universe
Mm.
and living with those characters and just experiencing that and enjoying that. Those two contributions brought to my mind my experience with now whether we would call this art or not maybe is an open question. I think I would. um my experiences with certain video games and movies when I was a
Yeah,
kid and still listen to this day, namely
sure.
Halo, this series, and Star Wars and Call of Duty, and then like all the different like cutscenes and trailers and things and shows that came off from those, and then extensions from those, and different stories that aren't any of those three, but stories that I now like because it gives me the same similar feelings, emotions, thoughts. And so thinking about what art is, like, obviously all of those things never happened in reality. Star Wars never happened, this game called Halo never happened, etc. Call of Duty, I know, right? But what they're all doing is they're recreating something or some things. They're recreating stuff that we see in reality in a different way. And of course, the prime thing that they're pulling from, at least on a very surface level, is military, fighting, war, conflict. And so art then to me is just the recreation of things we experience in reality. And through some method, through some standards, the artist has their standards, but like that to me is like the most basic view of art I have. It's just the recreation of stuff from reality.
So so a couple of things. One, I'm hearing a common theme of living with these characters or experiencing them again and living in that world on some level. Two, it sounds, just as a separate thing, I'm sorry, it sounds like nobody listening in outside of this Zoom can hear anybody but me, which is a problem. So I might shut down the, not you guys, but I might shut down the live because I want to just focus on what you guys have to say, and that's fine. So I'm sorry, commenters, if you can't hear it, that's unfortunate, but I'll see if I can fix it next time. Mark warned me that there would be technical difficulties. But I want to focus with you guys, and that's I appreciate you all coming. So yeah, living with experience, great. I think that's important. Or living in the experience, I think that's great. So Michael, what you got?
Art I see mainly as presenting an ideal or idealism, expression of idealism of how things should be, even if they may not currently be that way. It could be in a negative sense, like finding inspiration even like during the pandemic, for example, or economic or political hardships, or facing injustices, but having a notion of an ideal of how things should be, and but also in a positive, and even if external circumstances are good, that still needing a vision to aspire to. And recent art experience, I rewatched the Indiana Jones movies after it's been a long time, but those were popular. I really enjoyed those, growing up. But it's presenting a hero and heroism and good prevailing over bad.
Okay, good. Yeah. So, Mike, what do you got? You got some more art experiences? Let's wrap up a couple more and then move on to the next subject. But it's good. I'll tell you one that I've had recently, but it's good to have these recollections as we enter into this world of what is art and aesthetics.
Just that I kind of get this from Max Eastman and Arnold Bennett, but they talk a lot about art just providing an increase of consciousness or awareness of things.
Okay.
And that life, the ordinary life, is important. I think Barrett Browning says that the artistic mindset is that every common bush is a fire with God, right? If you approach it that way. But yeah, those guys are interesting. They don't talk about values though, like Rand does.
Sure. But they project them or something, or we get what that is, even if they don't explicitly hear it. So experience is one that I'm hearing a lot. Living with it, sharing and communicating. Communication. Those are important elements to something to do with what art is. And here's an experience that I've had recently that I think is really. Dick, what are you asking?
I was just asking for Mike to type in the chat or say again the line from whoever that was about art being like a bush of God. I really like that, but I didn't.
That is a good line. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to type that in there, please, that'd be helpful because that is a cool line. But okay, so an experience that I just recently had, and and I've had for a while, and I actually started doing this on my channel, that I find interesting and to think about, and it's grown massively, are these reaction videos on YouTube. Has anybody seen any of these before?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because what is it like? What? And I think it does tell us something about art and what we're trying to do with art. And you guys are already touching on it, but we're talking about you're watching somebody watch a movie or a TV show, and it's not even the whole thing, right? You're just getting edited clips, and yet these are getting tens, hundreds of thousands of views, and a lot of times it's the same show. So it's like, there's a show like Band of Brothers, the HBO series in the early 2000s. There's lots of reaction videos, and there's lots of them getting hundreds of thousands of views. So there's probably some people even watching them over. Why are people doing it? Why would anybody want to watch me react to Bob Dylan song or a Tupac song? Like what? Like how? It's such an odd thing, but it's so big. And I think it says something really interesting about art and what it is and why it's important. Just curious if you guys have thoughts on these reaction videos. If anybody watches them, what you've thought of. Yeah, Nicholas or Nick. Sorry.
I will fully, it's okay. I fully admit that I'm actually doing that right now. I'm watching someone, not watch a movie, but I'm watching someone play through Skyrim for the first time.
Okay. So for you, yeah, it's video games. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Her name's like Lucy something, but the value, and I've thought about this a lot because I grew up with watching people play video games. Sure. And I thought about this a lot. And my view is nowadays, at least, is that the reason why I watch people replay Skyrim or Halo or Titanfall, or any of these things that I've either loved and played myself, or I never played, but I find something I like in it, is that I get to see their reactions, and oftentimes their positive, loving, emotional reactions to pieces of the story that I had the same reactions to, or more saliently, more excitingly, when they have emotions to story beats that I never had an emotion to. And the concrete example I can think of is I really liked it when this particular person I'm watching, when she watched, when she played this video game called Halo Wars, the kind of main, dude, military guy protagonist, she actually found him really attractive. And she was the first person I've ever seen play that game who actually had a romantic inkling to the characters. And I never saw anyone do that ever with that game. And I thought that was awesome that someone could have that reaction to one of my favorite characters ever.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So Sarah, I don't know if you want to say this or not, but it sounds like almost what you're saying is similar but it's different. So what you're saying is got some different connections, but it's similar in a certain sense. I'm just curious if you want to share.
I'm playing music for my daughter who's 1 year old that I enjoy. And it could be anything. I mean, we listened to Peter and the Wolf for the first time a few weeks ago, but usually it's like 90s pop and R&B. But it's just so cute when something moves her. She has this really intuitive, immediate reaction to start kind of dancing. And she can say one word at this point. But for some reason, innately there is this love of music in her body. So I just enjoy what is going to set her off, what's going to resonate with her, and it adds to my own enjoyment of those same things that I liked already.
Well, that'll be an interesting when we get to art and cognition, the essay by Ayn Rand, Art and Cognition, which is going to be quite a bit later, I believe, chapter 4. What you're mentioning, Sarah, I think is really interesting because obviously, what's the name of your child?
Her name's Cleo.
Her name, Cleo. So Cleo obviously is not going to react to Jean Valjean yet, right? There's not going to be any but there's something she's obviously, all right away, she's reacting to music, and that says something about music as such, right? That we all react to it. And even people who are not super musical react. It's real. You can find something they can react to, a beat, that'll give them an emotional reaction. It's of all the universal things in art, and we think of art as very universal, that has to be the most universal in some sense, or at least it seems like it is, because every human being at any level will experience it. And I think that's really interesting. And you're witnessing it, and I've heard this from parents before, and that's great. And then I imagine connecting it to the reaction thing. I've heard this a lot of, like the parents sitting down to watch like Harry Potter with their kids for the first time when they finally are at that age, and then they're like looking at them and there's something, and that's very much the reaction desire of why people go to YouTube reaction so much. It's sharing something like that. Like this goes back to the sharing, but it's not just sharing with the author, it's sharing with each other. It's also a deep way that we connect in our communities. I mean, a lot of people who come to my Third Thursday, they're connected over one piece of art, essentially, so far. So yeah, I think that's really interesting, and it's cool. And Sarah, makes me think of like, there's an episode of Friends. I don't know if anybody watches that. No, nobody watches that. Okay. I'm the only layman.
I did when it was out
a while ago. Yeah.
there's an episode like Rachel has a daughter, and she reacts to this song, Baby Got Back. And everyone's like, why? Like, why would you have her? And then she's like embarrassed but then because it brings out so much joy in her daughter, she listens to it all the time. And like, it's a cute little moment of.
Speaking of which, go listen to the Jonathan Colton cover of it.
A Baby Got Back?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'll check that out. Please share. I hope one of the things we could do, and maybe I'll try to create some forum as all of us, as we go through this, sharing artworks that we love and that's meaningful to us. And Nick, you're talking about video games. I am interested if there's enough interest to delve into that, because I do think it's an area of art that is newer and that Ayn Rand didn't talk about, and that there's new technologies and new ways of having these experiences, which are clearly experiences that are some kind of artistic experience. And what does that mean, and how do you think about it? Okay. So, I don't know if anybody had any other artistic experiences to go into, and we'll get into the manifesto now, or the introduction. I will say, to kind of pinpoint something on the reactions front, to kind of close that loop. One of my discoveries, I think, Nick, you mentioned, is, so you're kind of having this vicarious experience through somebody, right? So this person had this experience of finding romantic attraction to a fictional character that was interesting to you, that you maybe haven't experienced before. And there's also something about art and why I think reaction videos are so popular, because when you experience a great work of art, profound great work of art for you, you can never experience it for the first time again. And in reactions, we kind of can. That's why I think so many people react to them. As you watch Saving Private Ryan or something, which is one of the more popular ones I've noticed, through the eyes of someone who, often the most popular ones are of women watching these. And that's another interesting psychological thing of why is that versus, like a veteran or something. And so, and part of it, I think, is because you get to experience it for the first time, because they're coming at it from such a quote unquote naked sense, and that they're not veterans. They don't have any relation to that experience. And so you're actually vicariously feeding off of that by looking at them experiencing this. And there's something really interesting psychologically about that I think is something at the core of art. And again, we keep using the word experience, and I think that's important. Okay. So let's move on for our last part of the introduction. And what I hope we'll get out of this and discussions. So I assume everybody read the introduction. It's only a couple pages. I know a few of you have already read the whole Romantic Manifesto. Why do you think Ayn Rand is starting off with a definition of manifesto? Like, this is a book, the Romantic Manifesto, she seems to make a really big deal of this. I'm just curious, like she defines manifesto, and she defines, what is she trying to do? What is she trying to accomplish with this first introduction? With the introduction. I was curious if anybody has any thoughts.
Why it's important to study art, why you should be interested at all.
So why you should be interested at all. So she says, according to my philosophy, one must not express intentions, opinions, objectives, or motives without stating one's reasons for them, without identifying the basis in reality. So, I don't know if I did this in the recording.
I mean, she doesn't. Rand is not somebody who, keeps her motives secret, or obscure. She says she's trying to, create a new movement that she caught a glimpse of in her childhood. She's trying to bridge from that to current times. She's trying to. That's the point of. That's the point of the book. And calling it a manifesto.
Like Communist Manifesto. It's trying to accomplish something.
Right.
And that's, I think, a little different. Like, I think I don't know if I did this in the recording, but I kind of mentioned this. Like, there's this big book of all these essays by famous people from Aristotle down to our own time in theory and criticism, where they're trying to analyze and, understand art and aesthetics. But I think it is really important to understand that that's not what she's doing. She's not just trying to understand aesthetics fundamentally in art. There's something she's trying to accomplish, and she's being clear about that. And that's important, because I think sometimes we can miss that as we're reading these, and we can kind of make the mistake of perhaps applying it in a certain kind of theoretical framework that's not necessarily her intention. That doesn't mean there's no theory here. That's not what I'm saying. We'll explore this. But yeah, Michael, please, what do you got?
Well, I think it's interesting she's referring to this book or herself as a transmission from the 19th century to whatever future romantic movement that springs from it. But she's also trying to understand why Romanticism in the 19th century collapsed from its philosophy,
right,
and to correct that error, and to build on a better basis.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. So again, I think a critical issue is thinking about her intentions, and she is clearly saying, I am doing something specifically toward this person, not purely for understanding. And I like the way you put it, Michael. Thank you. Of this, what did happen at, in my youth, there was this whole vision of the world, and then it's gone, and everyone let it go. And why, and that is a really intriguing and different and, a take on how to approach cultural analysis and artistic analysis, which again, you get some of that in this theory. I haven't read the whole book, but I've read some of it, of these books of theory. Okay, Don, what you got for me?
I think it was also interesting that she views it as a battle. I mean, she uses the word fight multiple times in the introduction, fighting for Venice, fighting for the future. She talks about the history of man as the history of struggle. She's like waging a war to preserve something that was great and that was lost. And why did that happen? Talking about it as a manifesto, like she has an axe to grind.
She definitely has an axe to grind. And I just want to read you this sentence because it's so Ayn Randian, and it's so important, I think, to understand how she's going to be different. And she doesn't even need to say anything about that she's fighting. Like you're right. She says, I'm fighting for this. But she doesn't need to, because all she has to do is, she says, this is on page 6, 7, 8, 9, or whatever, like the second to last page in this version. As for the present, I am not willing to surrender the world to the jerky contortions of self-inducedly brainless bodies with empty eye sockets who perform in stinking basements the immemorial rituals of staving off terror, which are a dime a dozen in any jungle. And to the quivering witch doctors who call it art, and like fighting words, right? Like,
I know. I felt like she was at my old band's gigs when she wrote that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, when you don't have, she doesn't ever have, she makes it clear because she's a very clear writer, but she doesn't have to. All she has to do is say that. And it's like, them are some fighting words. So this is a fight in a sense. I think of it in that way. And she's trying to fight for something and have something. Mike, I think, did you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah, I think it was probably said better than I was going to. But yeah, it's promotion, right? It's not just here I'm explaining my theory, but it's like, no, this is the argument for this theory. We'd all be better off thinking like this about art instead of that.
Now, yeah, and I think it's also important to say that it's not going to be, that's her intentions, but it's not going to be merely her opinions, because she has a very important view about like her opinions. And she says this, early on according to my philosophy, one must not express, I read that earlier, opinions, objectives, blah, 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 without stating one reason for them, without identifying their basis in reality. And she even marks that, i.e. without identifying their basis in reality. So on the one hand, she's going to fight for something, but on the other hand, she's claiming she's going to ground this in the reality of what it is. So I do think there's going to be, now I don't want to say that there's not going to be any theory of art here. There is, but she's, making this claim about both sides of, this is her opinion, or why she's doing this. But then here are the evidences she's going to explain in these essays, the evidence for why this is important. Okay. So let me bring it back to art again. So if you don't, at this point, because it's only a preliminary discussion, I don't know if anybody has more to say on this. I think when we get into the psychoepistemology of art, we'll have a lot more to say, because that's a very in-depth essay. My hope is that you'll get more out of this than you would on your own. And if you've read it, you'll get even more out of it, because we'll be sharing with each other and exploring and challenging and, going through all that stuff. In the introduction, the main thing I wanted to get across, and Michael, I'll get to you in 1 second, I'll just say, is you guys all touched on it. It's just your first conceptions of what is art, what are artistic experience, what does she say about the bridge, what does it mean for her to be a bridge, the fighting words, why she's fighting, and sharing with you. So Michael, go ahead. So I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish with this preliminary discussion.
There's another point that we brought up as far as her own, the sense of life of the period of her own upbringing. And I was thinking that cultural atmosphere is in itself similar to what the role of art is. But, she talks about seeing it real, and that once she's seen it, she can't settle for anything less, basically. But
sure,
that was contemporary, and lived versus just presented as an ideal in art.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's not just a theory. She's, was alive, or she was born 7 years after the premiere of Cyrano de Bergerac, right? Like she's, there's all this great symphonies of the 19th century, and that's still, and she mentions this, I think, elsewhere, contemporary to her. I think maybe in the introduction, that's contemporary to her as a young kid in Russia, right? And so all that art is just, she's consumed by it in her early years, and then after World War I, they kind of like started vanishing away, and you get this modernism. And it'll be interesting. One of the things I hope we'll discuss as we go through is just, it really seems like we are inundated with art today. And I do think we actually are. And that's an interesting, like it's everywhere. There's movies, and some of them I think are great. And there's TV shows, and some of them I think are really interesting and good. And there's music, but what are, we should be talking about what is the essence of art? Can it be better? Is it, worse than it? Like, these are all questions that I hope we will explore. And then I think, for a couple of us who might be video game nerds a little bit, we can talk about that, because that's a whole new art form that did not exist in her whole life, right? And I don't know how she would have felt about it, especially in the early days, but the the way it's transformed. And just to give you an idea, by the way, when we're thinking about like art as how big it is, I read something that like the video game industry is bigger than the music, the movie, and the television industry combined. Like it's massive. Like the amount of money for these things are huge. People are experiencing a lot through that, so that's important. Mike, what do you got for us?
Oh, the historical setup she brings up in the introduction, I think is important. A lot of writers at that early 20th century, late 18th century, are trying to defend the humanities. Earlier on, everyone, like you read Horace Mann, the optimism that just by shining the bright light of reason on all of our social problems and things, we'll understand everything, sapere aude and all that stuff from the Enlightenment. But when you get to the late 1800s, early 1900s, the guys in the humanities are constantly trying to defend the humanities, against all the obvious progress we see in the sciences and technology. It's like, well, why are we reading Homer, and stuff like that. Some people are even calling for not bothering with those things, not having that be part of education.
Oh yeah, that's my inspiration for the Literary Canon Club.
Yeah,
is the calls to take out the literary canon from education, which I think is the complete opposite of what we should do in education.
And I don't see modern thinkers wrestling with this any longer, with the humanities, defending the humanities in any.
Oh, it's gone. Yeah, so that'll be an interesting part of the conversation. I mean, I just heard this recently of just I don't remember what the article was. I'm forgetting it, but someone prominent, Vivek Saswamy, or what's his name, the guy that's doing he was saying like how we need thousands and hundreds of thousands of more engineers and more math. And I'm like, yeah, I want those too, but I think we need more art. I think we need thousands of more artists. Like we have lots of engineers and that's wonderful. And now we're gonna have AI to replace a lot of those. Like, so beautiful, amazing. Let's go to Mars and live to 2,000 years old. And that's all, I want all that stuff. But living in a bland world for 2,000 years is gonna suck. I want like a grandest art that's ever, and we need progress in that field. And, maybe we've gotten to a wealth where it's like, yeah, I'm not saying destroy any engineers, but I really think we need to have something more. And I think Ayn Rand is fighting for that more than anybody. I want to read a little sentence from her again, and I'll get to you in a second, Nick, but she said, I made it my task to learn what made Romanticism the greatest achievement in art history possible and what destroyed it. And she says that Romanticism and similar cases was defeated by its own spokesman. And that'll be an interesting part of our exploration. I love Romanticism and I've read a lot of the poets in particular. I think there's a lot of truth to what she's saying here and, that we'll explore as we continue. But Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add that to integrate it back to the fact that it's a manifesto, that it's not just that, to integrate what you said with the manifesto, that it's not just that we need thousands of more artists, like we need thousands of more engineers and scientists to create all the awesome stuff that we have and more, but that in connecting to the manifesto, it's that those thousands of artists, maybe Rand would say this, that they need to have a certain view of not just what art is, but what makes art good. And that, today we do have thousands of artists, but like many of them are not good. And part of the issue is that they don't have on a level, they haven't read the Romantic Manifesto, but on a deeper level, they don't have the proper.
Hold on, Marco.
They don't have something that Rand thinks is important.
Yeah, Mark, what were you saying? What is that law?
Sturgeon's law applies, which is 90% of everything is crap.
Oh, okay. Sure.
And but I'm sure that there were plenty of terrible artists contemporary to Ayn Rand's youth, but they're not worth paying attention to by definition. But I mean, except in maybe in the sense of the fight that Rand is trying to wage here. it's just I think they are they're just they're the terrible ones are more popular now, and there are reasons for that, which I'm sure we're going to get to.
Well, that'll be that's an interesting proposition. The terrible ones are the popular ones, because I don't know if that's always true or how to think about that. Because I do.
No,
know
I didn't say universally. I didn't mean universally
Okay.
popular, like terrible equals popular. Just that I think I think that popular art is more terrible than today. And in at the time, and also at the time that Rand was writing this, um, than she believed it was in her youth. In her youth, she believed that the better art was more popular.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing that we should discuss. And I think actually what I'll try to do in the future is we should all bring some examples of whether it's TV shows or movies or symphonies or popular songs, things you're listening to, enjoying, watching, reading that are impacting you. And that'll be, I think, a relevant part of the discussion, because, when we talked about art at the beginning, we talked about mostly experience was the word I heard the most, I think. Right. And that, so there's a question of, there's deep value in what Ayn Rand is going to offer. And we're going to talk about her analysis of the deep need, the human need. And I'll spoil a term she uses, like art is the technology of the soul. And I love that phrasing and how she puts it. I think there's something to that. But we're clearly all and I had this conversation with so many people having so many great so many artistic experiences, and they experience them as profound. I mean, just look at how many people flock to South by Southwest or ACL here in Austin, right? To have to be near what they experience as art. Now, we could argue and talk about whether it's worthwhile or as worthwhile, and I think that's part of a good discussion to have. But if we think of it as just experiences and an aesthetic experience, I think we're getting this a lot in our culture. And the question is, what might be better, if there is better, and what is Ayn Rand going to talk about? And that'll be, I think, the point of the book or part of it. Michael.
Yeah, I find interesting in the introduction, she characterizes the romantic art as having she writes, it's art projected an overwhelming sense of intellectual freedom, of depth, so on, which includes, above all, profound respect for man. But I'm just interested in that point is related to good or bad art, as far as with having philosophical depth, and the maybe challenge and contemporary art is, issues in philosophy, or that there isn't the demanding standards, that she hasn't, that to be avant-garde is to reject standards.
Yeah. And that'll be, and there's essays where she, and this is what the late 60s, early 70s when most of this is written. So there's parts where she'll talk about the aesthetic vacuum of our age, bootleg romanticism, and she'll constantly be referring to certain, art that she does enjoy of that time, including things like the Golden Girls, right? Or not the Golden Girls. What's that? Not Golden Girls. The Charlie's Angels. Charlie's Angels. Like, she liked Charlie's Angels at that time, right? And so it'll be an interesting discussion about what you're saying, Michael. I think about the standards, like what are the standards in music, and do we have heightened standards in our culture, and why or why not, and what's going on? And she talks about at the very end of this. She asked the question, will we see a renaissance in art, in her view, in our time? And she says, I don't know, but if anybody who fights for the future lives in it today. And so hopefully there is some kind of renaissance, and maybe there will be, instead of this. So I'm going to try to share this, but instead of this pushing everybody into technology and engineering and mathematics, which again, I'm all pro that, maybe the reaction will be something similar to the reaction against neoclassicism and yeah, Mark, yeah, one second. And neoclassicism and those things during the rise of the industrialization, which is what gave rise to Romanticism. So maybe we are going to live in something. I saw a good video essay that made an argument that maybe we're at a point of this second industrial revolution with AI, where one of the reactions will be in a massive increase in art and good art. Maybe we'll actually have a chance at some good art. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, we could always be hopeful. I think I try to. Okay, Mark, what you got for us? And they're going to be ending pretty soon. But
oh, sorry.
No,
Yeah,
you're good.
I just don't think technology or the current thing STEM. I don't think that's opposed. I don't think education is opposed one to those are necessarily opposed one or the other. Art's technology of the soul, but you can't do art without some form of technology, even if that technology is just horsehair on a stick for painting.
Sure.
And to your second point, there being the second industrial revolution with AI heralding new art, I think we're already seeing the flood of more content that cosplaying as art as a result of that. So I'm skeptical.
Well, yeah, I mean, that'll be an interesting. I'm hoping to bring these topics up as we go and have more meat to chew on from Ayn Rand's essay. Now, I would be curious, or essays. So I would like to hear from everybody before we leave. So I see, Tom, you have a guitar in the background. So for Third Thursday, I've been trying to look for some musicians. So and actually, we're gonna try to have our first musician this coming Thursday. I actually found somebody who will be singing some songs for us. But so, do you consider yourself more musical, movies? What's your highest form of art to you? And let's go around and just really quickly, if we have a hierarchy, like what do you turn to? Is it like, for me, it's going to be literature, poetry, then movies and other things. What is it for you?
I'll just start just because you had commented. First of all, I don't play the guitar. I took lessons several years ago, and it's been hanging on my wall. I like the look of it.
So it's wall art.
It's wall art. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I need to make a decision on it. But I think for me, it's usually filmmaking because it's funny because I haven't thought of these things. I'm pretty even as a designer, as a career as a designer, I think a lot about aesthetics, but I'm so fixated on visual aesthetics. I don't things that are. I don't think of I actually don't think of music as art, but it is. I don't think of it when I want art. It's usually like I need some type of visual. So, and that's just me. I mean, that's what I'm excited about. Digging back into these essays and learning more about I need a richer definition of these things. So I think it would help me appreciate the shows that I do like and the movies I see and feel like it's not just, you like it because you like that one character or it was a pretty setting or something like that, but I can have a more coherent view of this is a real thing. And my liking it means something.
Sure.
It's important. So, but I think films are my thing. And that's the thing that it's the thing that and it goes to the whole production. I see it as a total piece of how the music is working, how good is the cinematography, the acting, the story, even if it's not a, heroic, cheerful story, if there's certain ways that it's able to bring me into that world. And, being very judgmental, against a period piece that feels fake, like a lot of them do, feels like an Instagram period piece. I can't even watch it. I can't get into it. So I need that total visual. A lot of people don't need that. They need the story. My wife is very on story because she's a literature person, but I need the whole visual. Amanda, I'm I can't feel that. This is not feeling real to me. I'm out. So I think that movies, would be number one.
I'm looking for, because she talks a lot about movies, obviously. So and I was a film major, so I'm excited to dig into that. Joe, would you mind going next and telling what your top what's your top art to you? What do you turn to? Is it movies? Is it television? Is it music? Is it?
I don't think anyone.
You don't have to go into it if you don't want to, but
I don't think there is a top.
okay.
I get older, I don't like that. I don't like a favorite artist it's not.
Well, what about like just type of art? Like
I go to
movies
music.
or music? Music for you. Okay.
Music, yeah.
Music.
There's a handful of movies that I really like, but mainly it's music. And I get older, it's harder for me to read, and I don't know why. When I was younger, I could read easily. It's just more of a struggle for me now, so I read less. So.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this if anyone's interested. I actually suspect it's not age as much as our age. I think that's a ubiquitous experience. I'm hearing that a lot of just it's harder to read. And it's curious, I think there's reasons for that. We can, anyway, we're reading a 940-page book in our other group. And back then in 1605, it was, they didn't cuddle with a book like we might today. Usually these are tomes, but even in the 1800s, 18th century, 1800s, you would get, pretty big books because they didn't have all this other medium, and that was their media that they would consume, and they could consume a lot. We don't have that as much. I think the novel is dying for good or bad. Okay, I want to real quick, if everybody who else wants to just tell me, or I'd love to hear from everybody. What is your top art? You don't have to go into detail if you don't want to, but yeah, Nick, top art, real quick. Video games? You're muted.
No, sorry. So definitely for me, like when I feel the inkling for art, it's the hierarchy is at the top. YouTube videos where, the videos are of video games or movies or shows. Okay. And then after that, the only thing, of course, is literature. But like kind of like what you were alluding to, it takes a lot more effort and energy and focus to actually engage with those things. So the closest I get to actually going back to a work of literature for me is going back to certain lines that I've saved from Dante or Virgil, because I've finally read those guys. And like, oh my God, what a beautiful line. I love this so much. I want to memorize it. Of course, I go back to it, read it once and think I've memorized it, but that doesn't happen. But yeah, that's definitely the hierarchy for me. And again, it's because of what you're alluding to. It takes just more time and effort and energy than, our current way of doing things kind of makes conducive.
Okay, great. So we're running out of time. If you have to leave now or at 2 p.m., that's fine. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. But yeah, Sarah, I see yours. Movies, TV are at the top for me too, actually. I mean, literature, and I actually it'll be interesting to talk about movies, TV, and literature as a combined kind of genre, or a field of a medium. But yeah, I actually really appreciate there's a lot of great TV shows out there these days. So I hope we could discuss them as art. Michael, or wait, Don, did Don you leave?
Yeah, I'm just before you close, I would say for me, a dance is at the top right now, just because it's.
Say dance.
Oh,
okay.
That's
cool.
The visceral kind of physicality of movement combined with the music, so it's not all in my head. I need that. Yeah,
so you want to be a participant more. Yeah, I think there's something really valuable in that, actually. But yeah, Michael, what you got real quick? Because I want to see if we can get a couple more before we leave. And again, I'll stay for 5 more minutes for those who want to.
Opera is probably at my top. It brings in
opera. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Music. It's similar to what we've been saying about movies, bringing in acting and music and so forth.
Yeah.
But I particularly like opera, and because it is focused in music, and then I like sculpture, and literature is emerging more and more.
Literature, it's growing on you. Okay.
That's part of why I'm here. So.
Good. I love it. Who wants to, like, real quick, we're out of time, but who wants to just say what their top art is real quick? Has everybody said it? Mark, did you say yours?
I like a lot of things, but I want to echo the interest in dance, specifically ballroom. I don't know if what we do is art, but my wife and I have been taking ballroom dance lessons for the past 2 years. and I mean, we came in there, and I just said we had ambitions of adequacy. Um, so, but I've really enjoyed it, and I've also done a couple of in the past year, last year, hope to do more, some choreographed solo numbers, choreoed by one of the instructors there, and I've just really enjoyed that, doing that, and it was to an audience. It's there's art, there's music, it's movement, it's telling a story. So yeah, I've really enjoyed that.
Great. Okay, so well, it's 2. So if you need to go, thank you very much for coming. Again, Psychoepistemology of Art, 2 weeks from now. We'll get into that, and I think we'll have a lot to discuss once we get into one of the essays. This was our preliminary. So thank you for joining. If you can't make it, that's okay, but I hope you can. I'd love to stick with at least some of the same people in the first one. It'd be great.
Kirk, are you doing it every 2 weeks? Is that what this is?
Yeah, every 2 weeks. So if you look at the events,
okay.
And I'll share it with you guys first. So get tickets. Again, go for free. If you want to leave a tip, I appreciate it, but you do not have to. Really, I'm just exploring the whole making money from all of this. But yeah, just again, I think once we get into the meat of it, it'll be really. I'm hoping it'll be very interesting for all of us. But okay, so it's officially closing down. Thank you, and you can go if you want, or I'll stay for a few minutes. And if anybody wants to continue the art chat, didn't have something. Otherwise,
Before I go, can you tell me, is that the third Thursday meetup you alluded to, is that in person?
Yeah, that's in Austin. Okay. We do it every month.
Oh.
This month I am doing a talk on Cervantes and the search for the impossible dream, because I've always been thinking about Cervantes a lot. So, and I'm going to have a musical guest. Now, so if you can come down, I know you're in Houston, come down, because this is an experiment for me. If I'm going to keep doing it, I've done it for like 52 months or something like that in a row, but I need to try to make a little bit of actual money from it at some point, because I'm usually getting bled a little bit every month, and now I don't have a job at the moment. I should be getting one soon, but so yeah, I need to.
You and me both, brother. That's why I'm sorry. I have to. I would ordinarily tip, but I have belt tightening to do on my own.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, like I said, the paid club is paid. That's the Literary Candy Club. This is something I'm trying to expand, get more people interested, and then if you can join, there's a lot I'm trying to do down the line of more live discussions at some point, and then also having access to, even if you can't join live, listening to the discussions and having, I hope to build some guides to help you get through difficult stuff on your own, even if there's not a live discussion happening, and not at a lower price. So I'm trying to do stuff like that. We'll see if we can make a model that sells. But I'm excited about the Romantic Manifesto. I think it's one that's not explored as much, unfortunately, but in the Objectivist community, which is interesting to me, because it's like we have this. It's not saying it's not explored at all, but it's like, Ayn Rand is an artist, I think, and a creator, and we have so much on the philosophy and not as much on the art as art. And yeah, hopefully I can change that. We'll see. Hopefully we can change that. We're the beginning of the renaissance of art in objectivism and the world.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, one thing on that point, just real quickly, I thought of this too. Another reason that this is cool is that this is the book where she talks about sense of life. And if you think about this as also like art as a way of knowing yourself, that's an interesting perspective, because, if I read epistemology or ethics, it's really fascinating and it's interesting. And you certainly think about your own philosophy when you're reading it. But since art is such an immediate thing, right? We respond, we react, and then it's cool to go back and read her and start thinking deeper about, like, what does that say when I really felt moved by this? what is that saying about my sense of life or my psychoepistemology? I think that's kind of a cool perspective too. So it's not just being able to go, oh, that's art, that's not art. I want more of that, less of that. It's more like, who am I? What are my values? How are they coming to the surface when I'm watching a movie or something? And why do I respond and other people don't? Or why do people love this movie and I think it sucks? What's going right? What's going on there? So
with these Star Wars fans, man. I'm just kidding. So I have a lot to say about this, actually. One of my, I almost don't want to say criticisms, but it kind of is a criticism of many objectivist thinkers that I really admire, but I've heard them talk in a certain way about these characters multiple times that I think is a misconception about artistic characters. And, you know, so I've heard it about like Howard Roark and Hank Rearden and Peter Keating. And part of the idea of Peter Keating is that it allows you to have this monolith of the characteristics that you can go throughout the world and evaluate and look at all the Peter Keatings in the world that you find. And I'm like, no. That's not the fundamental purpose. The fundamental purpose is to find Peter Keating in you. You're more Peter Keating than you think. And if you don't have a model like that to evaluate that, and if I say, I've said that to objectivists and they go like, no, I'm Howard Roark. And it's like, you're the problem. Like, that's the issue of like, no, that's absolutely inaccurate. You may be Howard Roark, maybe you're more Howard Roark than others. Fine. I don't know. But the point of literature is to hold up as a screen to yourself. That's the cliche of literature and art, is that it's a mirror to yourself. And it gives you tools to evaluate yourself. And that should be the most important thing. It shouldn't be like, oh, that schmuck over there and, you know, roomed in the cubicle down the hall, he's a Peter Keating, I have to deal with all the time. It's like, no, that's not the point. I mean, yes, that's part of what you can do with it. The point is to recognize when you are being secondhanded and to have not a theoretical memorization of that, but an actual, like, I'm being a Peter Keating. Just like you should admire yourself when you're being, oh no, that's Howard Roark, right? Yeah, I'm creating something, right? I'm building something like Howard Roark, babe. Versus, is my dream really mine, or is it actually coming from somebody else? And I actually don't realize that I'm dreaming of a life that I want to have, and it's like, that's not really mine. And that's the importance of this stuff that I just do not see in the objectivist movement. I think it's such a I'm not saying it's not there. I'm sure it is. It's not like I've listened to everything, but I just do not see it. And I think it's like the point. It's like so important. It's at least the point that's being missed. Yeah, Michael.
Similar to Keating, but I read Notre Dame a year or two ago, and
Hugo.
Yeah, that I at least could find parts of myself in each of the, you know, characters. You know, even the priest, Frollo. But
yeah, that deep passion, that irrational passion. Yeah, that's in so many lovers. If you've ever been a lover, you've probably been a little Club Frollo, which is like the creepy dude. And most males have been the creepy dude, and it's really good to identify.
It pushes you to think of yourself.
Yeah, and you should be like, "Oh, I'm that dude," and it's like, I shouldn't be like that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's not just about like identifying creepy dudes out there; it's about warning you about not being a creepy dude. Don't do it. And like, this is what it looks like, is like this deep adoration from afar. That's just like, ooh, I want this woman. And it's like, and you're just, whoa.
Let's just say unrequited love. And
yeah. Now there, you know, and there's other,
not,
you know, what is unrequited? That's not grossed either. That's another version, but his is a gross version. Yeah. Nick.
Right.
But that's Michael. That's that's a good one.
Something tangentially related to your point about objectivists missing kind of the fundamental point of literary characters and whatever works of fiction or literature. I was talking with Nicholas Krusek last week. He's teaching the course on Goethe's Faust at the ARU, the Andrian University. And I was talking with him, and I was asking him, like, because he was so knowledgeable and clearly an expert on not just Faust, but Goethe. I just wanted to ask him and pick his brain. Like, how did you learn all this stuff, and how did you come to get all this knowledge? Because I was really impressed. I really wanted to achieve that one day. And he was telling me how within his answer, when he read a certain essay in the Romantic Manifesto, I don't remember which one, but it's the one which he lists a few authors: Hugo, Rostand, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Schiller, and I'm sure a couple others.
Probably
He
basic
said
principles
how,
of literature.
yeah, maybe. He said how apparently there's a common reaction among objectivists when reading that list. The reaction being, oh, this is now a reading list for me because now I want to read great literature, and Ayn Rand has given me like this list of recommendations. And he was one of those people. He was saying that I read that, and that became my reading list. And I started reading all these literature, all these authors, and this and that and the third thing, and here I am. So not a lot to push back against what you were saying, but I think there at least is a strand in objectivism of, hey, we all came here basically from the fiction, and we love fiction, we love art. That's how we got here. Hey, there's this more fiction, there's more literature, there's more art that Ayn Rand, really loved and admired and had reverence for, and therefore a lot of objectivists apparently, will see that list and go, oh, okay, yeah, totally, I would definitely read that stuff. So I think that's just pretty awesome. It's something to highlight.
Well, so I was one of those people in my early 20s, 100%. That's how I got into literature. Like I did not grow up as a literature person. I liked reading fantasy and sci-fi stuff sometimes as a kid, but I didn't get into literature until I read Romantic Manifesto, I think, in my early mid-20s. And I always say, like, I hated poetry until I listened to Poems I Like and Why by Peikoff at 27, 28 years old. And then I've read a lot of poetry since then. It's one of my favorite things. I love it. So I agree with you, Nick, in a sense. I think that's different than my point. I definitely, my point is that there's a misunderstanding of the fundamental purpose of literary art, including the art of Ayn Rand, in its ability to teach us something about ourselves. And the common theme that I hear in a lot of objectivists, not always, but a lot, is looking, using it as a way to look outwards at other people rather than using it as a way to look inwards introspectively. And, so it's like we should be judging other people. And there's a lot in objectivism recently in the last 20, 30 years, I think, that in my exposure to it, which is a good amount, that is heavily focused on the judging of other people and how important that is. And there's even a cliche about objectivists, which is true cliche, that they're very judgy. And I think that's true. And I think we should be judging in the sense of processing facts and thinking about things, but we should be first and foremost judges of ourselves, and trying to become the best we can before we have what I call final judgments about other people so quickly. It's one thing to judge Tom Reardon for having that thing on his wall and not playing it. Like, why are you doing this, man? What is, and to have a processing but really what I'm curious about is I'm curious about Tom Reardon. That's what judgment is. It's not, I'm critically judging him as a bad person for putting down the guitar. And all I'm saying is I think there's this strain in objectivism that isn't always the fault of all the intellectuals, because I know like Onkar and OAC definitely tries to beat this out of you as a student, and he does a great job of that. But there is that strain that I just picked up, and that I think is heavily in the culture, and it is in some of the intellectuals, where it's really an outward judgment, not a focus on how to judge the self, and an emphasis on that.
And you see literature in the way literature is taught, I guess, in objectivism, insofar as it is taught.
It's not really taught that much.
Yeah, right.
So, it's talked about in the periphery a lot through philosophical talks.
Right. And so insofar in that periphery, what you get as the message, if you're in the objectivist community, is, the point of hard work and all these characters is to see them out there in the culture and have a better understanding and know what to do at those points, rather than, so you can see if you have a strand of Peter Keating in you, if you have a strand of Cyrano in you, if you have a strand of Agamemnon in you, and how that's going to better your life. You're saying it's more the former, not the latter.
Yeah, I think you have way more evidence about yourself than the people around you. And the value of these things, I mean, yes, you should be able to notice when you're dealing with the Peter Keating but it, like the example I always think about, and again, I think Ayn Rand is just brilliant in so many of this stuff, is just think about like what Howard Roark is doing. He's trying to solve the problem of the dean, right? That's him judging, quote unquote. Does he have a final judgment in page 10? No, it's the very end of the book. It's years later when he's gathered lots of evidence. Then he has a theory about the problem of the dean and his view of it. And I just think people way underestimate the judging of other people and taking seriously just being curious about people and learning about them. But you do have a lot of evidence, yet, you do get way more evidence about yourself. And these literary tools, characters can help you guide yourself in certain ways. And I'll just, you're not going to be here on Thursday, but one of the points I wanted to make in the Cervantes and the Quest for the Impossible Dream is like, when should you give up on a dream? Like, when is a dream just ruining your life? Because you're going after something that's impossible. That's what tilting at windmills, when you're going after something that's literally for you going to be impossible. And then when should, how do you think about that? And if you never have any kind of iterations or shifts on your dream, that means you're not oriented toward reality, the reality of yourself, your capabilities, the world you live in. And that's what you need to be able to do. And I think having a character like Don Quixote is really powerful in that, in the sense of having this powerful image of a man who's spending his whole life getting beat up trying to chase windmills and tilting at windmills that he thinks are giants, but they just knock him around, and it's all these lots of stuff like that. So there's stuff like that I think is really important for us to really think about. It's not just about having a dream, it's about how do we do that. And that's literature. Literature gives, you could have a theoretical foundation and someone give a talk and definitions and examples they made up, or you could have a character that embodies all of that, and that you can much more easily say, I'm being quixotic, and have a real full definition of that.
I'll just say, just as a response, sorry, Michael, not to cut you off, but I guess I definitely agree that I've seen that strand in objectivism and objectivist, and that very quick to judge type deal. Very quick to judge type deal. I guess I would just say, like, I'm very sympathetic to that, because we do live in the culture of don't judge, and who are you, and what you know, and that kind of thing. And for Rand to say, no, judge and be judged, like, be prepared for that. And that's part of what it means to be human. It's part of what it means to be rational.
Yeah, so
I just want to say, like,
but you have to have the right perception of judge, is my point. So what I'm saying is, like, people have the wrong conception of judge, which is to have a final judgment. There's a certain kind of sufficient evidence you need when making a final judgment. And so you need to, this is the problem of why you need literary characters and to think about them in art so much, is you can't just have philosophical discussions about these things. Ayn Rand made this is what we'll talk about in here a lot, is you need the art. It's not an option. And so you need an image of a man struggling with one question about a human being, which is the second-handedness of first, for 15 years or however long it is that Howard Roark is dealing with thinking about the problem of the dean. That's how you should think about judging people. So the judge and then the other part that I'm saying is that there's the judge, which you have to have a whole conception of that, not just in, again, theory and definitions. That's helpful, but you need the character to fill it out in detail and to hold it in your mind. And then you need, in that definition of judge or be prepared to judge, that phrase, you need the be prepared to be judged, which I think is probably more important. And that the prepared to be judged is where we should be spending all of our time, or a lot of our time. It's the 80-20 rule. I'm exaggerating for effect, but you should be judging yourself and thinking about yourself introspectively, what your capabilities are, what you can do, what kind of world you can do, what kind of change you can make. Like the way I tell people is, you might at best be able to kind of master one thing. That's that in your life. So take that seriously. What's the one thing you might want to master in life? Because you're not going to probably master 10 things, and you may not even master one thing. And so you need to question, like, I'm trying to be this kind of writer. I'm trying to be that kind of musician. I'm trying to do this kind of field. It's like, I want to be an intellectual, but they are. It's like, no, you got to focus on, because you can't master everything. So anyway, Michael, you've been waiting a long time. So thank you. And thank you everybody for sticking around. Hopefully this is interesting.
Well, it's on point. I think it's I've read several commentators on literature, say it builds a person's capability to have empathy, that you have, you see other characters in literature and you relate to them in some way. And I think that could go to the, altruistic compassion type, but I think also it can lead to the justice and judging type, as far as in relationship with others, seeing good aspects and bad aspects, and filtering those out, and and focusing on what's to mutual benefit.
Yeah. No, I think empathy
is still
is
empathy of shared values is all I mean.
Yeah, and I think empathy is a really important thing. Again, something that in my experience in the community is not really discussed or understood. The way I was trained as a salesperson of what empathy is it's kind of, you're trying to understand where someone's coming from, but you don't necessarily agree with them. That's what I would think of as sympathy, right? Like I'm being sympathetic with Michael's feelings, but you want to be able to have the skill of understanding, Tom and that guitar, what's going on with that thing? What were the decisions in his mind when he was trying to pursue something, but then other things became more valuable and important, and it didn't, blah, blah, whatever. And I'm sorry to pick on you all the time, Tom, but it's right there. But that, like, empathy is the understanding of another person, and literature does teach you that. And it's a very critical skill set. There's other things Ayn Rand says here that art trains the consciousness. Well, if you think about our consciousness as the tool in which we encounter the world and navigate the world, that's goddamn important to train the consciousness. I mean, imagine if you literally were lying down your whole life and then you tried to get up and walk around and do things in the world. Your body wouldn't work. And so there's an importance of training your body. And I always tell, I built a gym in my house because I was like, you got to train the body. And I'm really passionate about people training the body to some degree, because you have to navigate the world. Your consciousness is way more important than your body in the navigating of the world, right? I used to, when I rode a motorcycle, I didn't really have anything to protect my body, but I protected the hell out of my brain, because that's all I got, really. If I lose everything else, it's like I'll still be alive if I have my brain, right? Like, but my point is that these types of things are really important, in art, I just think is so underappreciated. And there's very few fighters. I mean, Yaron tries to fight once in a while for art, and he's really smart, and I've learned a lot from him, even about art. But, he's always focused on politics. His whole career is built on politics. I think we need more. It's what I hope to do. I hope we have more people like me out there, and Lisa Van Dam and Luke Travers. We need people, way bigger voices of that in not only the community, but then out there. I'm also not a big fan of just the community only talking to the community, although that's what I'm doing right now. But that's, hopefully we need to expand, and try to get new people in new ways, and that's another thing. But I just, I think there's just so much to art, and we need to have that as a conversation way more. And we need the people that are pure philosophers. And, I've just encountered so many people over the last, I got involved in Objectivism in 2008. And yes, to Nick's point, there are a strain of people who are into the art, but damn, it's small in my experience when I go around there. It's like I talk to so many people that started with all this stuff with just the philosophy, and a lot of them, more and more are just not reading even the literature of Ayn Rand. And it's like, what? And they can't even get through Atlas Shrugged or something. I'm like, what? And I don't think of this as a small problem. I think of this as a deep phenomenon, a problematic issue in the community of objectivism, and then broadly in the world. And we need. This is my whole spirit behind Literary Canon Club. Yeah,
that
Mark,
seems
please.
that somehow that you know what there's a link there between that and your observation that people don't read as much anymore.
Yeah, I think people don't read as much, and so that's an important thing. Sorry, I was also reading your Daffy Duck quote, but yeah, so but I think there is a problem with that, and it's something to be addressed, and we have to think of how can we give people certain artistic experiences so they have some of the fullness of some of the characters that are needed artistically. Maybe that has to happen through education, and we need to change education. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to have this conversation with all of you and with anybody who joins. Next time, hopefully I'll fix the problem. It was not a problem for you guys. I was streaming to YouTube because I'm hoping to spread some of the stuff and get some more people joined in for my Literary Canon Club so I can make money and do this full time someday. But something went wrong with the sound, and like they could only hear my voice and nobody else's, and that was like weird. So
yeah, it was probably just taking a feed right from your mic, and it wasn't bringing it.
Yeah, I was looking at it because I'm using a software, and this is my first time using it. So
oh, there you go.
Yeah, using it for this purpose. I use it all the time.
Yeah.
So now I have to figure out how to make sure the audio is coming properly. Anyway, so yeah, thank you guys. We'll see you in 2 weeks. There's something on Troubadour, and if you guys have a better way of doing this, let me know. But I'm trying to keep everybody on Troubadour as much as possible. But I have created this thing on my website for social groups, which is kind of like a social media thing, but so it's something Wix does that I use. But what I'm trying to find is some way for all of us to communicate and share all of our arts and things like that in between the sessions. Something that is universal that we can hopefully all use. I know there's what do all the kids use? Not WhatsApp. There's that other one.
There's Discord.
Discord, yeah.
Discord.
No, not TikTok. Is that? Yeah, Discord. That
might not be long for this world in this country. Yeah, I understand.
That's true. Yeah. So I don't know. I could try the social thing and see if anybody's interested in posting, because I'd love for you guys to just share art that you're enjoying. Share a music video, share a reaction video, share a piece of literature, poem, painting, something visual, Tom, or something. I'd love to see.
Yeah. Are you saying that this is like the Wix package has some type of a forum functionality for people?
So I have a forum, but I'm trying to keep the forum for the paid people. Okay. So that is something we use, but this is something. So there's another thing that I'm having. I mean, I'll share it with you guys now. Nobody's used it before. I haven't shared it with anybody. You do have to become a site member, which is one reason I want people to use it, because it'll try to get more, not just you guys, but more people in the world maybe using it. But it's just a social group thing, and we could just create a post, put a video, GIF. I don't want to go that argument, and have conversations there. So if I'm gonna try it this couple weeks, share some stuff. It would really be awesome if you guys shared anything. I can't promise anybody will react to it, but I will. I'll see it. But it'd be helpful.
Will we get an email if you post something? Will we get emailed by that?
I think you could sign up for that. I think.
Okay, cool.
Because you have to sign up as a member, the free member. And so that'll be a good test.
Okay.
See you later, Nick. Thanks for joining. So yeah, I think that's all I got. I'm going to sign off and grab some food. I've done 2 of these talks today. I'm starting to.
Yeah.
But it was great chatting with you
cool.
guys. Thank you so much. And Tom,
cool.
We're going to make you do Third Thursday musical guest yourself.
Oh God. Yeah.
Now you have something to prepare for.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'll see you this Thursday then. And then.
Good. Yeah.
Next time for this. Right. Okay, cool. Thanks,
Michael.
Right.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kurt. Good to meet you.
Bye-bye.